Hey everybody, this is Jarrell Mason, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers while they're here to be celebrated. With me right now, I have the man who has been a part of some of your favorite records, nine-time Grammy Award winner, co-founder of Rough House Records, artists on that label such as Cypress Hills, Wyclef Jean, The Fugees, Criss Cross, just to name a few, and his discography ranges from James Taylor to Amy Grant, and we're gonna chop it up today with the Butcher, Joe the Butcher, Nicolo, Mr. Joe the Butcher, Nicolo. Welcome to Beyond the Album Cover, sir.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you taking the time to come on to the podcast. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Was the music industry something you always wanted to get into growing up, or did it find you when you were going another avenue?
I've always wanted to be in the music business. I have a twin brother, and we got our first tape recorder when we were in third grade. And then from there, we built a studio in our parents' attic that was called the Attic, actually. And we started just recording people and bands and stuff. And then we we moved out of our parents' house, of course, to another studio, which we called Half Track at the time. Um, and that was in the same town that we grew up in, Wayne. And then in we had Half Track for 3 or 4 years, and then in 1980 we moved the studio to Center City, Philly, and we called it Studio Four. Um, Soon after that, I started working with a lot of rap artists early on. Some like Schoolie D and Cash Money and Marvelous, Tough Crew, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Three Times Dope. And I realized for me to really put my kids through college, I couldn't just be recording people as a service and charging them by the hour. I had to have a piece of these records. And that's kind of how Rough House Records started. And the rest is history.
Right, you mentioned your brother, and I believe you all were rewiring speakers and amps at the local drive-in, correct?
That's right. That's right. Our first wow, you did your homework. Um, the first job we ever had was at the mainline drive-in where we would fix speakers. Uh, that was like our first job, and we would record the music for the drive-in, like the pre-show music. We would put these little shows together for the mainline drive-in, but that was our first job.
Ah,
Yeah.
so that was back when they had the little intermissions with the hot dog, the popcorn, the candy, saying, "Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all
Yes.
go to the lobby."
Yes. Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and back in the day, they used to call drive-ins passion pits, where they would charge per the car, and there was some backseat action that was probably going on back in those days. Now, back during that time frame, you had stations such as WHAT with Georgie Woods, and then you mentioned a lot of the early rap acts like Schoolie D, who's godfather of gangster rap. PSK. What does that mean? Was the template for Six in the Morning by Ice-T, and then later Boys in the Hood by Easy E, then GA Jazzy Jeff, Fresh Prince, Three Times Dope. And you had MC Breeze, who had a local hit with Discombobulator, Boobulator. And then when
Right.
we think about Philly rap, we cannot forget to mention Lady B, Street Beat, and how Power 99 really helped a lot of those Philly rap acts break nationally. Because I can remember hearing in previous interviews a lot of rappers who would go on to be big names saying, if you made it big in Philly, you were well on your way. If you could handle the Philly crowd, it was just as important as New York was when rap was really starting to gain its legs nationally and started to break out from being a regional sound. So can you talk about more about that, seeing Philly's rap scene rise?
Sure. Lady B, she had a show on Sunday afternoon, and because if you listen to rap music back then on Power 99, that's where you were going to hear Philly's best. So you wanted to be able to get on her show because if you got on her show, man, it was the first the first step into Power 99 possibly playing your record uh, the rest of the week. Um, and the uh, the 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 first two guys who really broke out of just hoping that their records would get played the rest of the week was Lawrence and Dana Goodman, and they owned Pop Art. Uh, so if you look at like Roxanne Shante, Steady B, Cool C, Bismarcky, even Marley Marl, those guys were on Pop Art, and they were first of all, I really owe those guys. I mean, I was like a 32-year-old white kid from the suburbs, and my idea of urban music was Stevie Wonder, Smokey Robinson, Jackson Five, So, uh, so that's the music I grew up with. So they're the ones who really taught me what real urban rap was. And this is a funny story because uh, Lawrence Dana Goodman is the one who found Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Lawrence ran the label. But this is a perfect example of what they taught me, and it's kind of funny. Um, Early on, I wanted to add real musicians to those early rap records because I knew it would expand the market, but you had to keep it credible. So people, so your hardcore rap heads wouldn't go, nah, man, that's just whack. Okay. So I started adding bass, drums, and guitar on one of the tracks that Dana Goodman was producing. And I see him like he's kind of sitting back, he's like shaking his head. So I hit the stop button. I said, "What's Dana, what's wrong? What do you think?" And he's like, "Nah, man. That shit sound too much like music." And it's like when you think about what he said, you don't take it literally. It was like the street audience is just not going to like it. It sounds too much like music. Well, of course it was music, but I knew exactly what he meant. You're pushing the envelope of live musicians too fast for that hardcore audience to accept. And that was a teachable moment for me because what really pushed it in Philly music and the Philly rap scene to get to that next level was Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Okay, because that that record, the Jeff and Will, they broke out of just the rap world, and to people who didn't listen to rap, you would get their comment would be, to be honest with you, I don't like rap music, but I like Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and that was the key because they were accepted by the hardcore community, but they were accepted outside of the community, of the hard rap community, and I think I brought a little bit of that because uh, being a student of pop art, it got me to know what real rap was. But listening to the Beatles and Pink Floyd and Yes and Stevie Wonder and whatever, I had more of a feel of like what people who don't like rap like, and the combination of the two is what made Roughhouse so incredibly popular.
Yeah, you knew what worked, you knew what attracted different genres, almost kind of similar to what Delicious Vinyl was doing out in California when they had Tone Loc, them put in Jamie's Crime, Van Halen, and Wild Thing, and sampling Hot Blooded by Foreigner for Funky Cold Medina for Tone Loc, got them crossover airplay not only on urban, but also on mainstream rock because of the rock samples.
Right, exactly.
Right. And then I didn't know this until it was an interview that was done maybe a year or two ago on Questlove Supreme with Jazzy Jeff, that there was another version of Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble, which was more harder edged. But the one I remember was, of course, the bright, polished, poppy version that sounded very similar to Parents Jones to Understand with the same background. But that was right around when they had that pop crossover. And like you mentioned, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, they were hard enough for the streets but was sweet enough for the sweets and was able to find that middle ground where they're beloved by middle America, got airplay on MTV, but was hard enough for the hood too.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the first Girls of the World and Nothing But Trouble was uh, before they got signed to Jive, and it was Clive Calder and Weiss, I think it
Barry
was.
Weiss.
Right. So, to make a long story short, they're the ones they took the original and then they had their guy who was Brian Chucky New, who was not that doesn't matter. It doesn't. I mean, he was English, but that didn't make any difference. But he kind of pasteurized it for your protection. Okay, which and I totally understand. They thought it was just it was a little too rough for that mainstream audience. Um, but you're right that there wasn't a couple original. Parents just don't understand, and Girls of the World Ain't Nothing But Trouble. The original versions were just a little more hard edge.
Yeah, and then so was A Nightmare on My Street, which was unauthorized because it was right around when I think the Fat Boys had did "Are You Ready for Freddy" for one of the Nightmare on Elm Street soundtrack, and that was the lead. And of course, they had the Nightmare on Elm Street sample, and of course, the big court brouhaha, and they couldn't really release that record because of all the legal woes that came behind it.
Right.
Eh,
Exactly.
right? And then you mentioned pop art, and when we think of Philly, of course, first thing to come to mind for most music heads is going to be Philly International Sigma Sounds with Gamble, Huff, Bunny Siegler, Thom Bell, Linda Creed. But we don't really talk about Cameo Parkway, most notably, put out records for Chubby Checker, Bobby Rydell, The Times, Patti LaBelle, and the Bluebells, and then of
The
course you had.
Dovells, yeah,
Mhm.
Dovells, yeah, yeah.
Yep. Then of course American Bandstand, based out of Philly, and then Dancing on Air, which rebranded itself to Dance Party USA, and Kelly Ripa got her start on that dance show. So coming from Philly, you mentioned a lot of the era of music you grew up with. How big of an effect did Philly International have on you coming up?
It had a big influence because me and my brother Phil, we were more on the technical engineer producer side as opposed early on, as opposed to being on the A&R side of what like what an A&R person does, and for the audience, that's more of a person who listens to the music, listens to the songs, and decides this artist is worth putting on out, where we started off more as just the engineers of the stuff. So what first hit me about Sigma was Joe Tarsia and the way those records sounded. They they had such a great sound, and they were mentors to me first from the standpoint of the way the records sounded, which was Joe Tarsia. Then Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, they schooled me in terms of like what makes a great record for people to listen to from a music standpoint. And the combination of those two, what was just such a great influence because um, I was about 10 years younger than those guys, maybe a tiny bit more. So, they were kind of like the Jedi Masters from Philly as to how it was supposed to be done. So they had those they were great influences, but as far as listening again, man, listening to music, I just loved every style of music. My dad would listen to opera on Sunday. So I loved mostly the Italian operas because my dad was Italian, but it gave it just I just love every style of music because good is good, okay? And that's so important. Some people have, and that's one of my biggest complaints about the music today is you can be so selective in the playlist you listen to that you don't get the opportunity to listen to other styles of music. When I was a kid, it was WDAS, WMMR, Power 99, and WYSP. And those stations, you could hear Earth, Wind, and Fire next to Led Zeppelin. You could hear Billy Joel next to Stevie Wonder. Okay, so and it's like it's funny because I'm sure you've seen them so many times. You'll have on both sides, like on TikTok, you'll have these two young urban dudes who they listen to 21 Savage and they listen to Yaki and whatever, and then they'll play them like Van Halen, and they're like, this shit's banging, man. This shit's banging. Same thing with your heavy Metallica guys, and they'll play them Too Short, and it's like that shit's oh man, this shit's rough. This I love this. So we've lost some of that because you just don't it's like it's right there. I mean, this box, okay, you can listen to more so than when I was a kid. You can get I'm okay, this is Spotify, right? You can listen to every style of music, millions of songs that you can listen to, okay? Music is a banquet, and most motherfuckers are starving to death. Okay, that's my biggest complaint, and it's because you've been conditioned to. Yeah, of course you like this shit. Of course you do. Okay, but like you can't eat steak and lobster every day. You know what I mean? Try a couple vegetables. You might like them. Okay, so that's my soapbox shit for the day. But
Yeah,
it is
yeah,
what it is.
yeah, I agree. The variety gets lost, and because we have all of these different formats where you can only play this genre, that genre. Because I interviewed a former record man who worked at Epic when he was trying to break Sade in the States, and he had to explain to her how to play the race game when it came to radio here in America, whereas over in Europe it's very diversified, it's free form, whereas in the US, oh, we can only push you on urban. We can only push you on pop. Now, if you were urban and had pop appeal, you had to break urban first. And then you got the pop dollars and the pop promotions because that's why you see with some artists and labels, the pop departments have the bigger budgets than the urban departments. You saw the bootleg video on BET, but once the pop version hit, you had a more polished version on MTV. Now, I want to touch into you mentioned Spotify earlier and how
Mhm.
streaming has taken over with how we consume music. But on the artist side, the royalty rates, depending on your deals, not very lucrative. How can you ask an artist to split like a fraction of a penny? Whereas if they were to still put out CDs or physical mediums, you could possibly be able to get more investment, more money back on the physical aspect as opposed to on a stream because labels then take into account new technologies that were to come in. So it's still, at least from the outside looking in, feels like the wild, wild west when trying to have artists get the right royalty rates for streams so that they can make living off of that.
Well, man, yeah, that's that's a tough one because and I'll try to break it down as simple and as quickly as possible. If you okay, where do you start? The royalty rates have to get better, okay, because they're abominable. But the competition is so fierce that unless you try to build yourself up in your local community and you get fans locally, which is always the way things first started. Um, that's how you break out of a city. But it seems, but to find places that you can play your music or get exposure is extremely difficult, right? So okay, so what do you do? Well, first of all, you can't do anything with absolutely no money. You have to have some sort of backing, or you have to have some amount of money to see if anybody cares about your music. This is what I mean. Aside it Okay, Spotify is has become the really only game in town if you want to expand your fan base, get a data sheet of emails and text numbers where people are listening to your music, and then exploit that from now you have your fan base, now you know who your listeners are, okay? And I'll use a perfect example. I dropped okay, first and foremost, the record can't just be good, it has to change my life as I know it, okay? Which is a hard thing to do. But if it doesn't, you're just not going to break through the din of so much music that's out there, okay? So, I discovered this kid. His name's Sky ZNO, right? As a matter of fact, people can go check him out on Spotify. Nobody knew who this kid was. He had 12 listeners on Spotify. Okay. So we finish a couple of records that it's like The Weekend meets alt rock. I mean, I'm like, this kid, he's 21, but he's a kid. I've got, my youngest kid is 38. He's got something, man. And music, 5,000 bucks to see if anybody cared about his music. And this is what I did. There are let me break this down a little from before. Does your audience know what payola is or was? I'm sure you know what payola is or
Uh,
was.
yeah, break it down for our audience.
Okay. Back in the day, payola was money that record companies and promoters would pay radio stations to play your record. But it was illegal because radio stations are owned by the public. The FCC controls it. So because they're owned by the public, you couldn't pay a station to play your record. So what you did was you brought a suitcase of money under the bridge and you paid. I'll leave the people's names out of it because I don't want people to get I don't want to get in trouble. You brought that person at Power 99 money and he played your record. Okay. Now, that happened everywhere, right? Radio record companies would pay to get your record played. So now your record's getting played on Power 99, your record's getting played on WABC in New York, it's getting played on WNEW in Boston. So now your record's getting played. Okay. That doesn't mean that you're going to be a hit because people have to, like, the record comes on and somebody's talking. This is what has to happen. Records, so you're talking, you're having a beer, whatever, and you're talking, and a record comes on, and you go, wait, hold on, man, what is this? Who is this? What is this? If that doesn't happen, you're done. You're done. Nothing's going to happen with your record. Okay. And today, what do people do? Oh, what is this? They Shazam it because they want to know what it is. If people don't react like that, you're fucked. Okay? Because people don't give a shit about your music because it ain't good enough. Okay? It was always that way. So when people say, "Oh yeah, man, the record companies they put all kind of money behind Blasey Skippy, and now Blasey Skippy's a big hit." Well, that's one out of 10 Blasey Skippies they put money behind. Okay? They put a bunch of money behind Blasey Skippy and his brother Blasey B and his sister Charmy B. None of them fucking records took off. Blasey B took off. Why? Because people went, what's that? What is that joint, man? What's that shit right there? Okay? Now, fast forward to now. Okay? Now, instead of having radio stations, what do you have? You have playlists. Okay. How do people find out about music? Their playlist, you know, my top favorite rap joints or music that only white rock kids like, which is actually the name of an actual playlist. Okay. So you got your big playlists and the key and the way you do it now, you got to get on those playlists. Well, guess what? Playlists are not illegal. Why? Because the government can't stop you from paying for a playlist. It's not like it was before where it was illegal to pay. Now you can pay playlist to add your record to their playlist on Spotify. So this is what I did. Okay. Uh the playlist the company, let's say, will remain anonymous, but I get them $5,000 to get me on the best playlists, and $5,000 ain't shit. Okay, $5,000 ain't shit. Major record companies are spending 10 times that. All right, but I'm like, okay, man, you got me on a couple of playlists. Okay, well, we'll see if this record has legs. We'll see if people like it. Okay, I spent $5,000. They come back to me and go, dog, this they're playing this shit. And in 2 weeks, I have 100,000 streams and 60,000 listeners on Sky Zeno. And 2 weeks ago, you didn't know him from a can of paint. Okay. Now, now we just dropped a Christmas song that they're buzzing about, right? Now I got to spend another $5,000, but now Virgin Records is like, Joe, we'll help you out. Why? Because it's like, shit, man, he's got 100,000 listeners in 2 weeks. What the fuck? So now Virgin wants to help me with the record, right? And it still doesn't mean this is going to be a hit. 100,000 ain't a million, ain't 10 million. You got to do 75 million streams to be a gold record. A million streams, it's about $4,000. But a million streams at $4,000 will have maybe 150 listeners. All those 150 listeners have unique identifiers, their phone number or their email address. Now Sky Zeno has a database of 150,000 people who like his shit. So what do you do with that? You cater your shit to those people as it grows. You send them specific joints that nobody else has. You send them shit that nobody else can get. Okay. The average, now it can't be a casual listener. It's got to be a follower, not just a listener, a follower. But if you get 100,000 true followers, they will spend $100 a year on your shit and go see you. If you do the math, and 100,000 followers compared to I don't care who it is. If it's Taylor Swift or Beyonce or 21 Savage, that ain't shit. These people have billions of streams. Okay, 100,000 followers, true followers, ain't even going to come up on anybody's radar. That's shit that people don't. I've never heard of them, but you will gross $1 million if you do that. That's why when you go on Spotify and that's like I hear Wet Leg, it's a band from England, Wet Leg. I look them up and I'm like, holy shit, they've got 3.4 million listeners. They've got a song that's got 200 million streams. And I don't know them from a can of paint. Have you ever heard of this band, Wet Leg? I bet you haven't. I
No.
bet you, and now I'm not sure what your demographic is. I'm guessing it's a little more urban, but you can take any style of music. I bet you everybody who watches your podcast doesn't know who the hell they are, and they're making bank. Okay,
Mm.
so I don't want to hear, if you're not good enough, if you're not savvy enough, and if you don't want it really, really bad, don't bother. You're not good enough. Okay. I'm saying good enough. I'm not saying really good. I'm not saying great. I'm not saying unfucking believable. You're just not good enough. Now, it's okay. Uh, okay, going back to the five. I got the 5 grand, right? With my guys who are going to get shit on playlists. Now I know we're supposed to be talking about Rough House and my history and all this, but this is science that people need to know now. Okay, I'm done, and it's like, whoa, what was Jazzy Jeff like to work with? That's all cool. And oh, by the way, I'm gonna have to drop out. I have a Zoom call at 3 o'clock. Okay, but I promise you, we'll get done at 3. We're gonna do a part 2.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll go to 3, talk about what we need to talk about, and then in part 2, I'll tell you how I got the drum sound for Cypress Hill, whatever you want to talk about. All right, back up. So I got $5,000. If you Now again, man, maybe it's impossible for you to get $5,000. Maybe you could get 3. If you don't have the wherewithal, or a machine, or a family, or a GoFundMe, or you can't come up with $3,000, which for some people they can't. I understand, but if you can't, you ain't hungry enough. Okay, you ain't hungry enough. It's like, oh, it's impossible for me to get 3 grand. I can't. There's no way I can do that. I just have to stop. Then stop. Then stop. This is not cut out for you. It's not cut out for most people. This business isn't difficult. It's fucking impossible. Okay? It's not difficult. Fucking impossible. All right? So now, okay, let's say 3 grand, 3 grand, 3 grand, 4 grand, whatever. And I go to my playlist people and I play them like, 3 songs. They don't want to take my money if they can't do shit, because I give them the money then and nothing happens. So I'm like, you fucked me, dude. Why did you take my money? They won't take my money because they don't want to fuck Joe the Butcher. Okay. But they don't want to fuck anybody. They want to be successful for you. So now let's just say I give these guys 3 grand. I give them Sky Zeno, and they go and first, and it's like, okay, well, they first have to say, yeah, we can get this shit on playlists. If they say we can't get this shit on playlists, go back to the woodshed, go back to the lab, come up with something else, because even the playlist guys don't like it. Okay, but let's say the playlist guys like it, and they get you on playlists, because some people want, now they're not, you can't, there's a lot of fake playlists. That's the thing. You got to be careful, because a fake playlist just is a room with 1,000 phones just racking up the number. Okay, and if you do that, Spotify knows right away and they will cancel your ass. Okay, that's why you see, sometimes you'll see, like, wait a minute, here's an easy way to check. Go to YouTube, right? And you go, oh, wow, man, Blasey Skippy's sister, Chantel Skippy, she has 100,000 views on this video. Damn, Hold up. How many likes, thumbs up or thumbs down does she have? Well, let me see. Oh, 56. Wait a minute. Hold up. You got 100,000 views and 56 likes? That shit's fake, dog. That shit's fake. You can spot a fake a mile away. You can smell a fake a mile away. All right. So the playlist guy now gets your shit on 4 playlists, small ones, maybe 10,000 listeners, maybe only 100 listeners. Now, that song, new this week, Blasey Skippy, Blasey Skippy's record, right? So Blasey Skippy comes on, and you got your shit, you got your person. It's like, oh wow, new song, Blasey Skippy. Let me check this joint out. Nah. Or let me check this joint out. Yeah, man. What does he do? He tells his other 4 buddies, you gotta check out Blasey Skippy. This shit's hot, dog. Shit's fire right here. So, so it's on the chart, and the playlist guy, it's like I can, depending on how much money you give them, it's like I can have the playlist. They'll keep it up there for like 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, if it ain't getting streams, kick your ass off the playlist. What does that tell you? People don't like your music. They don't like it. They listened to it and they went, nah, this is garbage, dog. What else you got? Okay. So, in a nutshell, that's how the current, music business works. Now, so you're still in those smaller numbers, you're still really going to make your money performing live and having that direct interaction, excuse me, with fans. Because again, man, even a million streams is only gonna it's probably you're not even gonna recoup the 3 or 4 grand that you spent going paying for these playlists. But you got to think of it like, and that's the other thing too. It's like once you're on a playlist and people discover it and listen to it, and there's a continued listening, the playlist person will leave it on there. They'll leave it on because people are listening to it. If you can get into that maintenance level where every month you get X number of listeners, and every month as it grows, there's another playlist that you discover. You don't have to pay the playlist people because the record is popular. It grew its own legs.
Mhm.
Okay. So, and now I've talked for about, 97 minutes. But that's.
That was very, very fascinating, that breakdown. So definitely a perfect way to sandwich part one. We're gonna have you back for part two, where we're gonna go more in depth with Rough House, talk about Fuji's, Lauren Hill, Crisscross, the whole 9 yards. So any shout outs you want to give before we conclude part one of this interview?
Any shout out? I'm sorry, any
Any shout outs, any people you'd like to thank before we close part one of this interview?
oh, well shit, man. I mean, it's like um especially the people who schooled me early on, especially like I said, Lawrence and Dana Goodman Pop Art. Um I was I was also like again, I was a staff producer for Columbia Records. For like 13 years. So Donnie Einer and Tommy Mottola, who ran Columbia Records at the time. Well, Donnie ran Columbia Records. Tommy ran Sony. They uh, they allowed me and my partner Chris Schwartz. They gave us kind of free reign when it came to Rough House, because it's like some of the shit we put out, like some of the Tim Dog stuff was a, was a little too racy for Sony to put it out. So they were like, "We can't put this shit out, but you can," you know. Um, so yeah, along the way, it's like again, like you say, Lady B, Butterball Tambora, like the Joe Colari, a lot of the guys who had the dance shows. They they would give you the opportunity to uh, to play a record that you liked, and then once you reach the tipping point where it's like, oh man, the butcher is giving me an exclusive, you know, that of course helped make whatever record we were trying to break, so.
Mhm. Yeah, and you can catch this interview wherever you stream podcasts and on Facebook, facebook.com/, Beyond the Album Cover. Ladies and gentlemen, this was only the tip of the iceberg. We'll definitely have Joe the Butcher Nicolo back on for part two to go more in depth. Joe, thank you for coming on Beyond the Album Cover. We appreciate you.
Thank you, man.
Yes,
Appreciate you too.
sir. Yes, sir.